Alright, so the Microsoft Xbox showcase just took place, and I don't cover a lot of Xbox stuff here on the channel, and just to be fully transparent, most of what Xbox has been doing, Microsoft has been doing these past 5+ years or so just has not been interesting to me. I have no interest in the games that they were doing. It didn't motivate me to want to buy a Series X or S. It just wasn't up my alley. But a lot of that has changed. And I gotta be 100% honest, give credit where credit is due. This was a really good showcase. Maybe the best showcase that Microsoft has put together in 5 years, maybe even 10. It was just game after game after game and pretty well paced. Now it was long, it came in about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and they did drop a surprise at the very end that we will get to a little bit later, as well as new consoles. They're gonna release a digital version of the Series X and then a brand new special edition of the Series X itself, which I think is still gonna be disc based. And by the time we got to the Indiana Jones portion of the showcase, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a little bit burned out, a little tired out, but the showcase itself, there's a little bit of something for everyone, and genuinely almost all of what they showed off looked really interesting and looked really good. And I don't just mean visually, like of course these games are going to look stunning, but they look interesting. Like I genuinely want to play these games. And there's a few that really stuck out to me, including one that features Ben Starr, which we will get to in a second. Now before we jump into the Xbox showcase, I have to give a massive shout out to a game that showed up at Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, and that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. I'm a huge fan of the Power Rangers. Growing up, I was obsessed with them, and even as an adult, I still go back and revisit a lot of the older seasons with a different perspective now that I'm older. And Rita's Rewind looks insanely fun, and it looks like it's heavily inspired by TMNT Shredder's Revenge, where they're going to take all of the great Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis Power Rangers games, take the best elements from them, and put them into this brand new, seemingly 5-player beat 'em up following the MMPR characters. There's elements of the Super Nintendo Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in there, Power Rangers the movie, the game on Genesis, even something like Power Rangers Zeo Racing. There's elements of that in this trailer as well. This is super cool. I'm always down for a really fun brawler that takes iconic characters from my childhood and updates them. And I don't know if they would be able to do it. There might be some weird licensing issues, but I really hope they can get all of the incredible music from MMPR the show that scored all of the fight scenes into this game. Songs like Fight, 541, We Need a Hero, these are all like the hardest of the hard rock for kids that just gets you amped when you hear them. It's the perfect music to beat up putties and want to punch somebody in the face, so I really hope that they can get that music into this game. Now let's get to the Xbox showcase. But we start off first with Doom: The Dark Ages, which had been rumored for quite some time. Doom guy, Doom Slayer, has made his way to the medieval ages and now going to fight these medieval monsters and demons. He still has his arsenal of crazy guns, but he's also now got this cool razor shield, which he can kind of pull it like a Beyblade and launch it at enemies, which looks super sick. And this is also going to be coming to PlayStation 5, so if you don't have an Xbox or a beefy PC and you got a PS5, we can now play this, which is really cool. And this honestly kind of seems like the strategy Microsoft is going to go with a lot of their titles now, where it's like, yeah, we can put this on a PlayStation 5 or a Nintendo console, but your incentive to play it on an Xbox is basically you get it for free. You do Game Pass, you get access to this huge library of games, which is really great for consumers, although some developers have said that being on Game Pass is a double-edged sword because there is the chance that your game will get discovered, but there's also a really good chance that your game will get buried and bogged down by other titles, and apparently some developers don't get a big kickback from being on Game Pass, which is unfortunate. Now, I don't really play the Doom games. They look sick. I have played some of the demos, but I think just in terms of gameplay, I'm way too stupid to play these games. They're so fast-paced and require so much accuracy that I feel like I would probably struggle to play these games, but it just still, Doom in the Dark Ages just looks really sick. But the next game that really stood out to me was South of Midnight, and they showed this off last year. It was just a very brief trailer, but this year we got a very short but sweet gameplay demonstration with the lead character riding this big bayou fish guy who's talking to her, and her whole aim is to reach this church bell tower to ring it, and I think to get the attention of the other enemy that's been swimming in the area, which is this big gator that has these trees growing on top of it. And visually the game looks stunning. The lead character looks awesome, and I really love what they're doing with the animation, where the characters, the enemies, birds, all of the like moving people and animals in the game are going to be rendered presumably at 24 frames a second, but the environment is going to be running at 60. So when you first see it, it is a little bit jarring. It takes your eyes a minute to adjust to the different frame rates, but once you do, it looks visually very stunning. And it's almost kind of like the animation style that they did in the Spider-Verse movies. Now the combat does seem kind of like the third-person action stuff we've been seeing a lot lately with games like Sekiro and the Souls games, and there's so many of these types of games coming out that the gameplay kind of starts to blend and mimic other games. But I think the visual style and aesthetic of this game just is what's really going to help it stand out. And it looks just genuinely really good. It's super polished, and I'm intrigued. I want to know more about the lead character. Why are these animals and fish, gator people talking? What's the overall story? So it looks very intriguing to me, and the music especially. Music really stood out. Traversal, there's like some elements of Horizon in there with Spider-Man, where you have these wind tunnels that can push you forward. You also have a glider. It just looks really sick. We got full-on gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, which we covered a little bit last year. Some people were really worried about this because it is Konami, it's not Kojima. He has no involvement with them anymore. Things ended very poorly between those two parties. But people weren't really sure what to expect from this game because all we really got were just a few screenshots that looked pretty decent. But now we actually got a gameplay trailer. And from my understanding, this game is visually going to be brand new. I think they might be making some changes to gameplay, like quality of life stuff, but all of the performances in VO are from the old Metal Gear Solid 3. So they're just pulling from that instead of doing new voiceover with new voice actors. And visually, the game looks really damn good. It looks stunning. And the original Metal Gear Solid 3 was a blast to play. I played the crap out of that game, especially the online multiplayer, but just exploring that vast open world, trying to avoid some of the animals and some of the enemies. There were some classic moments in this trailer that I remembered from the original game. So it looks visually very good. I just hope that they can keep that gameplay nice and tight the way we remember it and just kind of give us quality of life stuff. Perfect Dark. I've never been a Perfect Dark fan, but this trailer looks super sick. It's, you know, Joanna Dark is back, basically like female techno James Bond doing some really cool stuff. And I just wanted to put this one in there because this game was seemingly in development hell for so many years. It seems like they had idea after idea and then everything got scrapped. Some of their leads from the developers decided to leave for other companies. It just sounded like this game was never going to come out, but the trailer they put out looked genuinely really interesting. Parkour inspired elements. It just looks interesting. Like I wouldn't mind trying that out. Up next was Diablo 4, which I have to give a shout out because it has one of the silliest weird names out there. Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred, which made me laugh when I first saw it. It just sounds like really silly and over the top, but the trailer, even though it's just a cinematic, we all know what Diablo is and how it's going to play. That trailer was grotesque at times because there's this young woman, she's carrying a crystal. There's another guy with her on this boat and he's transporting her and she's clearly struggling with this crystal. And the crystal is emitting this like black ooze and this voice comes out and it's supposed to be, I think, her mother, but it ends up being who I think is the devil. And she's put into this really weird, like psychotic dream scenario where she's being strung up in an X position. And then one of the grossest things I've seen in a very long time happens where basically from her arm all the way down to her hand gets split. And you just see all of the viscera and sinew and blood and gore. And it's disgusting. Kind of makes me wish it was a movie. But even that, like, I'm intrigued by that story now. What's going on there? Another game that showed up, Mecha Break. When I first saw this, I'm like, wait a second, is this like a Gundam thing? And then I saw the combat and I'm like, this is some Zone of the Enders shit. For anyone that remembers Zone of the Enders and Jehuti, those games were a blast. So this kind of feels like that, but so much more mobile, so much bigger, grander. It looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. And then the last two games, these are the ones that stood out to me the most, other than South of Midnight. And the first one is the one that they dropped at the very end of the show, a Gears of War prequel. And this is just a cinematic trailer, which I'm totally fine with because it's Gears of War, again, like Diablo 4. We know what the gameplay is. The Gears games aren't too crazy, but they're really fun, cover-based shooters that are fairly simple, but the gameplay loop is just really fun and addictive. And it's Marcus Phoenix, a young Marcus Phoenix, fighting a big locust brute in this house, and he's getting his ass kicked until he reaches for a TV and smashes him, and the fight ensues, and eventually he can take out the locust, and he almost dies himself until a hand grabs him, and it's Dom. It's Dominic Santiago, and it's like, hang on, what's going on? Are they rebooting Gears? Is this a prequel? Because they're both young, and we know, obviously, spoiler alert for those who didn't play Gears 3, Dom is dead, and when we last saw Marcus in Gears 5, he was much older. And it looks like they're just saying screw Gears 5 in that story for right now because they don't clearly know what to do. They're just going to do a prequel, and that's going to be Gears of War E-Day. Emergence Day, which is what got this whole Gears of War franchise started. And we learned bits and pieces of E-Day over the years in some of the Gears games and find out how Marcus, was labeled as a deserter for trying to save his father, and then he was thrown in prison, and then we get the original Gears of War where Dom breaks him out. So getting to actually live through Emergence Day with Dom and Marcus is going to be super cool. And again, it's kind of nostalgia bait, but they got me because that game in particular was like one of the games I played as a teenager. I think everyone that had an Xbox 360 played Gears of War 1, 2, and 3 and probably really loved them. So to bring those characters back, it sounds like the voice actors who were in the OGs are going to come back as well. It's time. I want a really good, fun Gears game again. Gears 5 I don't think was bad, but it kind of felt like they didn't really know where to go with the story, and it left on a cliffhanger, and clearly that cliffhanger is not going to be addressed for a very long time. And they did include Mad World, which of course, it's a throwback to the old Gears. You gotta include Mad World in there for the nostalgia. It just feels right. And now, the final game that really stood out to me because of a specific voice that we hear in the trailer, which ends up being none other than the Ben Starr, Clive Rosfield from Final Fantasy XVI, is doing a VO for a game called Clair Obscur Expedition 33, or as some people are calling it, French Persona, because it is a turn-based RPG that's being developed by a French studio by the name of Sandfall Interactive. And this stood out to me, because freaking Ben Starr is in it, but it's a turn-based RPG. And we cover so much Final Fantasy here on the channel, and a comment that I see so often is, I miss turn-based RPGs. I miss when Final Fantasy was turn-based. Now granted, this is not a Final Fantasy game, but it is a turn-based RPG, seemingly a 3-character party system with some very visually cool looking enemies, and it also kind of takes inspiration from other games. I'm sure this has been utilized in other games, but I really remember it in Legend of Dragoon, where you have to time a button press to the character's animation to amplify their attack, and it looks like they're going to utilize that type of system in this game. Now, I only played a little bit of something like Persona 5, but I don't recall if that was an element in that game's combat system, but I know a ton of people love Persona. The music in Persona is fantastic, and this game, is like French Persona essentially. And I do wonder, what will Expedition 33 do that's different, that's special, that will help it stand out from other turn-based RPGs? Looking at Final Fantasy VII, they had the Materia system. Final Fantasy VIII had the Junction system. 10 had the Sphere Grid. So what unique gameplay thing is Expedition 33 going to have that really stands out and feels hopefully new and inventive? All we really have to go off of is the trailer, and it just kind of sounds like there's this really weird entity, probably the big bad of the game, known as the Painter, who essentially destroys the world once a year. He repaints it in a new vision, which causes people to either disappear or just straight up die. And every single year, this new expedition, this group of people is put together to try and investigate what's going on and try to put a stop to whatever the Painter is doing. And that's loosely what we know from the trailer, but again, it just looks really cool. Visually, the graphics are insane. Kind of has a bit of a cartoony fantasy element to it, but I know a lot of people really want to get into the turn-based RPGs again, and it kind of seems like there might be a resurgence of those. Of course, Persona is Persona. That's always going to be around. We've got this game. There are rumors that Final Fantasy IX Remake will in fact still keep that turn-based aspect to it. So it really seems like turn-based is making a bit of a comeback. But this game looks super cool. I'm going to keep my eye on it. I don't have an Xbox, and as far as I know, this is exclusive to Xbox, but I just thought it was really interesting, and it just really stuck out to me. honestly, and to see a brand new original RPG come out in this day and age and decide to go turn-based and have someone like a Ben Starr in it is super cool. But with that being said, that's the video. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Again, this is very different. I don't expect anyone to really check this video out, but maybe, hey, you were someone who watched the showcase. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Did you agree with me and think that the showcase was actually very good? And if so, were there any games like Expedition 33 or Gears E-Day that stood out to you that looked dope? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.